Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the fourth and last webinar of the GPP Desk this year. This webinar is going to cover the topic of social and environmental considerations and the link with the subject matter. Before getting into the topic, I would like to remind you all some housekeeping rules. Those that have already followed our webinars, you are already familiar with that. But if it is the first time, please remember not to use the Q&A function of WebEx, but to connect to Slido. So ask your questions throughout Slido. You simply need to connect to slido.com and then put the hashtag GPP helpdesk. I would like to share my slides for you just to present you the GPP helpdesk. So the GPP helpdesk is a service contract that is managed by ICLE Europe and EDEL on behalf of the European Commission, DG Environment and DG GROW. And the aim of this service contract is to provide answers to stakeholders' inquiries and to disseminate this information on green and social public procurement. The GPP helpdesk has been set up more than one decade ago. It started focusing only on green and public procurement, while now its scope has been enlarged to cover also social aspects in a sustainability perspective. The services which are provided by the GPP helpdesk foresee news alerts, development of good practice cases, examples which are included in the newsletter, but also you can find them on the website. We organize webinars on topics which are related to green and social public procurement. We answer queries, and we also provide relevant information on the GPP advisory group meetings, the GPP criteria, and training toolkits. During the summer, the website has been completely revamped, and this is how it looks like. So you can see that one section is about the criteria, one section is about the good practice library, and then there is also the possibility to ask questions, also legal questions, on green and social aspects through the form that you can find here in the Green Public Procurement Help Desk. And you can send your questions in English, French, and German. Here you can find all the links. My colleagues will put the links in the chat, but you will also find all the presentations and the material of this webinar today. So now I would like to ask you, I would kindly ask you to connect to Slido unless you have done it yet. So you can go to Slido and then enter the GPP helpdesk hashtag, because we would like to hear who is following us today. You can also use the code that you can find on the screen. Okay, so the first question is, we would like to know who you are. Are you a contracting authority, an authority in charge of public procurement policy, a company, a contractor, a central purchasing body, a law firm, or legal professions, company, contractor, social economy enterprises. So we can see that the majority are contracting authorities. Good. This is good because the topics we are going to cover today are mainly for contracting authorities. Okay, we can go to the next slide, to the next question. So now we would like to hear from you. When you hear the link with the subject matter, what comes to your mind? Difficulties, relevance, fear of litigation, selection criteria, sustainability, proportionality, complexity, challenges, easy, compliance, award criteria, training, complicated, restrictive, coherence, opportunities, focused, cautious, resistance, responsibility. Okay, I'm really happy to see that sustainability is the key word, the most important. Mm, what comes to your mind? Yes. Very good. Okay, we can go to the next question. Why is it important that all the criteria applied in tenders must be linked to the subject matter of the contract? As you know, all the criteria that are applied in tenders must be linked with the subject matter of the contract. This means that they have to be related to the goods, services, or works that are being purchased, and they cannot refer to the general corporate policy of a company, for example. Relevance. So the link with the subject matter is important to stress the relevance between what is bought and the social and environmental considerations. Clarity, regulations, transparency, avoiding risks, avoiding greenwashing, legal necessity, fair competition, requirements, regulations to ensure a logical link for clarity, ECJ, observing regulations, legal certainty, fulfilling objectives to be proportionate, meaning, avoiding confusion, consistency, equal opportunities, relevance for proportionality, foreseeability. Okay, thank you very much. We go to the next question and final one. So this is a question for companies. If there are any companies following us or contractors, do you feel prepared to respond to tenders that include social and environmental considerations? A bit. Not yet. Okay. Yes, fully. Okay, the majority thinks they are a bit prepared, which is encouraging. Not yet is still 30%. Okay, so we hope that this seminar will clarify some concepts and will be useful. Okay, so thank you very much. And now we are going to to start the really getting into the topic. But before that, we are going to hear from Ivo Locatelli an overview about the activities of the European Commission on strategic procurement. Ivo Locatelli joined the Commission in 1991, and he worked in several departments and started dealing with industrial relations with Japan, then the telecoms regulations, and now he has been in charge of public procurement policies for many years. And he's now leading the strategic procurement policy team. Previously, he was in charge of the e-procurement team of Digimarkt. So we will share the slides for you. Just a second.
Many thanks, Valentina. Many thanks for this introduction and for organizing this excellent webinar, which touches upon a very important topic. And actually, the level of attendance confirms that this was a very good choice. Very quickly, next slides, please. Which aims to very quickly recall what are the numbers of public procurement. We're talking about 2 trillion of Europe, or about 14% of the GDP. Public procurement is very fragmented. We are talking about at least 250,000 public buyers and public entities. What is above the EU thresholds represents more or less 20% of the total. So most of public procurement occurs below the EU thresholds. Public procurement is of course essential to deliver many services to citizens, also to business. These are mentioned in the slides. We go from waste collection, energy, education, infrastructure. In fact, works are the largest element of public procurement, but also social protection and especially health are very big sectors. In some of these sectors also is to be considered that the for example, in the case of health, the public procurement is maybe the largest market if we consider the overall sector. Thanks. Next slide. This slide is a bit to maybe looks a little bit complicated, but is to stress that there is important evolution ongoing in public procurement and especially in strategic procurement. Well, before, and this is highlighted by the gray line, public procurement put more effort on the tender and less on the preparation and execution of the contract. We think that this approach has to be a little bit reversed, which putting more emphasis on preparation and also on contract execution. The preliminary market consultation is really essential in this respect. Also, such as to understand what's going on in the market, what are the key players, what are the emerging technologies, and also to ensure that the tenders are prepared in a way that it's not outdated. I have to say a very recurring mistake in public procurement is to repeat and copy and paste the old tenders, because of course this will not allow to catch what are the relevant evolutions in the market. Of course, when we talk about innovation procurement, which is also related to indirectly to what we are discussing today, it's very important to connect to the ecosystem, which is composed by a number of actors, which are listed here in the slide, like universities, research centers, startups, incubators, and so on. Next slide, please. How do we force strategic procurement? We have a number of activities. I'm going to be very quick on them. We gather a number of activities which aim at collecting, developing collective intelligence. An important project which is called Big Buyers Working Together, which follows 2 previous pilots which were very successful. A platform, public buyers platform, I will provide you later the address, and also we fund a number of projects on public procurement of innovation. We also provide a number of support material, building up knowledge, which are, for example, guidances, we have developed a number of guidances on social procurement, for example, on innovation procurement, which have been published in 2021. We have been doing a lot of webinars, like those organized by the help desk, but also some organized by us directly. For example, there has been a cycle of webinars which introduced the guidance on social procurement. Another one, a cycle of 5 webinars on the guidance of on innovation procurement. These webinars are all recorded on our YouTube channel, and also you can find them on our platform, the one which is mentioned here on the left of this slide. We also fund a number of training programs, the one, for example, for central purchasing bodies or for a policy officer when there is not a CPB. We are also about to launch two important training courses aiming at the development of innovation to reach green and social objectives. This will start in 2024. And overall, we'll have a lot of activities which aim at closing the gap between the innovation ecosystem and public demand. Next slide. Let's again one more. So the big buyers working together project aims at really stimulating collaboration between the public buyers around unmet needs. So it's really about trying to use the strength and the force of the market to develop innovation and shape the market. The public demand, so it really has a role in this respect. The activities are organized around, let's say, 4 macro areas, so ICT and green transitions, health and social procurement. For health and social procurement, there are 2 working groups each. For ICT and green, there are 5 to 6 working groups, which range from topics like sustainable solar panels or zero emission construction site or heavy duty vehicles for waste collection, for example, just to mention one. If you are interested, please contact the Secretariat. There is still room to take part in these activities. The activities include, of course, joint work between the various parties, but also webinars, hackathons, study visits, and missions, and preliminary market consultations, which are prepared jointly by participating buyers. Next slide. The overall objective is really that all buyers face the same challenges. These challenges are very tough, complicated for public buyers, and also at the same time, technology is evolving very fast. There is a need for innovative solutions to many problems. It's really important in this respect to connect with the market and to work together with other buyers in order to drive the market for new solutions. Next slide, please. This is the public buyers community. Here you can find the link and also how to subscribe to it. Next slide, please. This public buyers digital platform, again, is about sharing information and empowering public buyers to work together, to foster exchange of knowledge and to encourage joint actions. Next slide, please. And we have built a number of communities of practice. I think that now there are 9 or 10. One is, for example, on the procurement of artificial intelligence, where the community of practice has developed draft contractual clauses for the procurement of AI, which are aligned to the AI Act just adopted. The draft so will be fine-tuned and aligned to the newly adopted version of the AI Act. But there are also on central purchasing bodies, on sustainable solar panels, on green and fair ICT, on legal review bodies in Eastern Europe, on BIM, so building information modeling and public procurement, and so on. Next slide, please. So really, if you want to keep in touch, well, we publish a lot of information on LinkedIn in the groups which are mentioned in the bottom left of the slides, agents of innovation procurement and actors for social impact procurement. But we also, of course, have a functional mailbox, but really the most relevant tool to keep us informed is to subscribe to our newsletter, the Public Procurement Gazette, which is issued monthly and which includes information on regulatory developments, webinars, opportunities to keep in touch, and also guidance or other material or funding tools. So that's it, and enjoy your webinar.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Thanks a lot. As we have 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Impressive. If someone has a burning question to be asked to Ivo about the work of the European Commission, please put it in Slido. And in the meanwhile, I will describe you the program of today. The format of this webinar is a bit different from the previous ones because we decided to invite Professor Caranta, who is an academic. I will introduce him in a minute. So he will give a lecture about the topic. As we know that the link with the subject matter and social environmental consideration is sometimes an area of uncertainty. So we have decided this time to foresee in this webinar a capacity building session, which will be followed by the concrete experience of 2 contracting authorities who are going to tell us how they deal with concretely with ensuring a link to to the subject matter when designing social and environmental considerations in tender documents. I do not see any question, so
There was one, but
there
maybe
was
in
one.
the chat.
Okay. Okay, let me see. Community. Good morning. Does the public buyers community organize sessions with the companies participating in tenders? Is there a formal engagement between buyers and corporations? And then there is another question. How do you define social procurement? What is the view of the Commission regarding the social enterprise? For the next question, really, please use a Slido.
I will very quickly answer to the first one. Does the public buyer community organize sessions with companies participating in tenders? Yes, especially in the big buyers, there are preliminary market consultations, which of course take place in accordance with the rules, which means full respect of the principle of transparency, non-discrimination. This is extremely important. This preliminary market consultation can be organized in a multilateral format or in a bilateral format. Let me also say that the guidance on innovation procurement provides both inviting letters for both type of preliminary market consultation, as well as the questionnaire to be used in a context of a preliminary market consultation. And these documents are translated and are available in all EU languages. Is there a formal engagement between buyers and corporation? No, there is no. I'm not sure I got the question. If this formal engagement means a commitment to purchase, definitely not. We are just in the context of consulting the market, understanding where the market is going. So if this is the question, definitely not. Of course, there is an engagement of, and there is an interest in understanding also what are the needs of public buyers for the suppliers. The second question, it's a bit more tricky. Maybe I would leave Roberto to this hot potato so that can address this certainly with due reply.
Thank you, Ivo. Well, before starting the presentation, since this is a very specific, I would just point you to a very important judgment by the Court of Justice, which is just last year, is Azade, is a C43520. I might just write here in the chat since it is open. It is not an easy judgment. They are often not the easiest, but it is quite an interesting one because the Court of Justice is saying what is the room for social market actors in public procurement. Then I think that would deserve 1 hour just for that specific topic.
And in the meanwhile, I'd like to introduce Professor Carantar. Professor Carantar is a full professor with the law department of the University of Turin in Italy. He has been working on public procurement with a specific focus on sustainable public procurement and on remedies, on EU and administrative comparative law, including focus on judicial protection. He's also the coordinator of the Sapiens project, which I'm sure many of you are familiar. It is an Horizon 2020 project, sustainability and procurement in international, European, and national systems. Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Valentina and Delfina, for having me on this. I'm not sure that a professor is the most suited to make things simple, especially when they are very complicated, as in this case. But I will do my best to highlight what are the important points concerning the link to the subject matter. We had a lot of adjectives, nouns flashing, and they are very, very on point. So, first, just a bit of history. If it is not legislation, it is the Court of Justice, and the Court of Justice has been instrumental in making clear that sustainable public procurement is something that is a possibility under EU law. And there were two very important cases. Concordia Bus was the first one. It is possible to acquire buses with limited emissions. Environmental requirements are okay, provided they are linked to the subject matter. Beautiful. We don't know at that stage what is linked to the subject matter. This was clarified in Evian. That was about the purchase of energy from sustainable sources. And the Court of Justice said purchase of energy or from sustainable sources is okay, but you can't put an award criterion on the energy produced, including to the energy sold to other customers. So we have already this important point. This important point is that you needed to focus on your needs, not on needs from other people, organization, and so on. So focusing on your need, and I really need to build and thank Ivo for what he was saying. You really need to give importance to contract design. This is really the phase where you add this important aspect. And remember that under Article 18, the design of procurement. Fanny, you have a question now? We have a question from Fanny. Do we take question during the presentation? Later, okay. Sorry, Fanny, later. So the design of procurement, you decide what you want to put in your procurement. For instance, the old benches case. You want works, but you want works done by long-term unemployed. You can do that provided that you are not artificially narrowing the competition, meaning you are not purporting to use public procurement to pervert it, to do something different from what public procurement is about. So also consider proportionality. You design the contract, you add to the contract what you think are relevant, including environmental and social components, without artificially narrowing competition. When can you say that the competition is artificially narrow? If you ask, for instance, for some specification that is really not providing any real benefit. You are asking, for instance, for using a dump that is a waste dump that is very close to your place, but let's say the transport, the fuel emission is so limited that you're not really caring about the environment. You are just trying to restrict the competition. Concerning the link to the subject matter, you really needed to keep in mind that this honestly doesn't apply with mandatory requirements. And there are many mandatory requirements and they are growing. Link to the subject matter is used when you are really going beyond what is already required by the law. So what is already required by the law? Remember, we have this very important principle: compliance with applicable obligation in the field of environmental, social, and labor law. You can ask a tender to comply with this principle during the execution of the contract. And the Court of Justice in TIM really stressed this as a principle, but not just a principle, a cardinal value for which the member states must ensure compliance. And when we talk about contracting authorities, they are part of a member state. Also, keep in mind, and I think you will need much training and information on this, there are new requirements being introduced in the legislation. And these requirements have an impact on public procurement. They become part of the mandatory EU requirements that are referred to in Article 18. And on the slide, I have a couple of instances. And the first one is Article 24 of Directive 2023, which is about equal pay for equal work. and there is a specific provision on procurement. The second instance is in a regulation. Beautiful Finger regulation is basically already in force. There is 1 year for the Commission to prepare some implementing measure, and this is about products coming from deforestation, and there is an obligation to exclude economic operators caught into this kind of business. And a lot of additional measures are now in trialogue, very important ones, including the Corporate Sustainable Due Diligence Directive. So, lot of new legislation is not about the link to the subject matter. This is about economic operator that must behave according to certain standards. Coming instead to our link to the subject matter, this is when you go beyond legislation. And we have a very, very important case, Sophia Group. It's a case by the General Court. You can see it's T, but it has really developed important aspects. So this was about our criteria. They were giving points for action about equal treatment, combating sexual harassment, inclusion of people with disabilities, quality of the working environment, and formation. Asking for certification schemes, including ISO 9001 or equivalent. And this was challenged by, okay, you are procurement professional. One of the first answer when you were asked about the link to the subject matter was litigation. Okay, so we had litigation, but the judgment is super, super important. The idea is it is perfectly fine to ask all that was in the previous slide, because this was not about the general corporate policy of the contract of the tenderer. This was about the employees actually going to provide the service that was required under the contract. And even if the European Parliament had not articulated the labor requirements, the specific titles of the award sub-criteria were for the General Court sufficient to make clear what the European Parliament was looking after. So very important, and this gives allows us to some generalization. So the first is about labels, environmental management system. Well, it would be easier if one could just ask the label. Well, it could be easier for contracting authorities, but it is not possible under present market conditions, because labels, certification schemes, these are expensive to get. It's a limited number of operators having those, And so if you require those, you will be artificially, so we go back to Article 81, artificially limiting the competition. So you must be ready to accept alternative means of proofs that your tenderer is actually meeting your requirements or equivalent. So, taking homes, what is really important for you? There are more and more and more mandatory criteria. You need to be aware and you need to act on that. I'm aware that countries, member states are very different. But if you take Italy, France, Spain, and many others, you are right to be worried, you might be right, but then it's worth risking worrying to add too many criteria. But you must even be more worried about not asking mandatory criteria, because you will have the second ranked challenging the world, saying there was this mandatory criteria on deforestation. This the winning tenderer, it is on the blacklist. It shouldn't have been awarded the contract. So you need really to be aware that there is nothing less than an avalanche of public procurement relevant rules that will not be in Directive 24, 23 or 25. They will be in specific directive, in specific regulation, but still relevant for procurement. Second take home, you really need to focus on the implementation of your specific contract. Presently, under EU law as it stands, you can't ask that your contractor is meeting very high ethical requirements along all its branches, all its activities. You need to focus on the implementation of your specific contract, unless, of course, it is about breaches of mandatory criteria. If a contractor has breached, for instance, legislation on equal pay of men and women in the past, and you have a proof that this has happened, this is a possible exclusion under Article 57(4) letter A, provided, of course, transparency. This specific clause of exclusion is either provided under your national law or you have added in your contract documents the indication that those having been found in breach of environmental social obligations will be excluded from the procurement. But because this is mandatory, if you go beyond what is mandatory, you really need to focus on your specific contract. Again, this Sophia Group case is super interesting. It is about the working conditions of the workers working at the European Parliament, on the European Parliament premises. Last very important point, and this is a difficulty. This is a difficulty for mandatory criteria. This is a difficulty for additional criteria you might want to impose. Having information. It is tenderers from 27 member states, not counting other third countries when this is under your contract, your procurement is under the WTO GPA. How you get information? We need to get more information. The Commission is taking some actions on this. On the deforestation regulation, it is the Commission that needs to dress a list of delinquent economic operators based on information from the member states. But the list being dressed by the Commission, that will be easily accessible for contracting authority. And last but not least again, a law for equivalent means of proof. Thank you very much for listening. I already see there is some hands raised questions. Valentina was already so kind to mention the Sapiens project, so I leave the floor to the debate. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Roberto. There is one question. How do you define, well, it's the the first one that we have already seen. How do you define a social procurement, and what is the view of the Commission regarding the social enterprise? I know I will put it in the chat. There is a definition of social procurement in the Buying Social Guide. And about the social enterprise, there is not in the public procurement directive per se, but in other pieces of legislation, there is a recurring definition of what is meant by social enterprise. That, of course, has to be looked into the definitions of the national legislation. And social enterprises are not yet defined in all EU member states. This is the reality. But Roberto, if you would like to complement on this.
No, you were really smack on the point. We have just a few indications, but it's not so much about social enterprise, about NGOs in Article 77 of Directive 24. So not really the social enterprise itself. So you look more into national legislation.
Then there is another one that
Marcela.
that including a real CSR, corporate social responsibility in procurement beyond mandatory criteria is okay with EU law, provided that.
Well, it depends. Sorry for, but it depends whether you are asking elements focusing on the workers, on the production process for what you are buying. So if you are buying postal services from Amazon, you can ask Amazon, to comply with equal pay rules in Europe, but not in the United States, because the directive is not applicable in the United States. If you are asking for measures to fight sexual harassment, as we do not have a specific directive on sexual harassment, you can ask for policies concerning the unit within your tenderer that will be delivering your goods or services. You cannot ask for a general corporate sustainable policy. What will be different when? I'm saying when because from what I'm told, but Ivo for sure has much more updated information than I can have. The Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive is going to be approved, is going to be entering force, the member state having a number of months to implement that. After that, it becomes mandatory. You can ask companies, tenderers, if they are covered under that specific directive to comply with the directive. Mind that the directive is about due diligence, which is a way to assess compliance, assess a process of compliance with CSR. But you can't impose under EU law as it is today a CSR on your tenderer. Then we have Anonymous, ethic policy, legitimate criteria for evaluation or qualification. Again, ethical policy, as in the case for the European Parliament, for the workers, for the business unit, delivering the specific contract, yes. Do you prefer qualification or award criteria evaluation? Well, Sophia was on award criteria. Qualification is also possible. It depends very, very, very much on, and I go back to what Ivo was saying, market consultation, market research is super important. It depends really on your market. If this is a market where you have many providers, cleaning services, you are not a super big contracting authority. You know that there are hundreds of cleaning services company. So it might make sense already put this as a qualification requirement, meaning that you tell the company that you want someone that will comply with these rules in the contract. So rather than qualification, contract specifications. okay? Beyond mandatory, you don't have exclusion. But you can already say beforehand, listen, I want this quality system to be in place. The alternative is I'm already giving points if, like in Sophia, if the qualification system is already in place. Meaning that you might still have a contractor that doesn't have the system, which might be a bit less than ideal.
Roberto,
Valentina, if you want
yes,
to.
I would suggest that we stop now with the questions and we go ahead with the other two presentations, and then we can go back to these questions at the end. Otherwise, we are going to run
Yes. It's
out
already,
of
yeah.
time.
Sorry.
So no. I mean, it's a topic that raises a lot of questions, so we can and what I also propose, if the commission agrees, is that if we do not manage to respond to all the questions, we can maybe go back and find a way to respond in writing to the participants. Okay, so let's now continue with the concrete experience of two contracting authorities. The first experience is from the Netherlands, in particular from Walter van der Wilst, who is the policy advisor on procurement from the Dutch Custodial Institution Agency. Walter has been working for more than 10 years in the Dutch prison system, and with his team, he's responsible for for the procurement policies that they call procurement with impact. This means that their main focus is to engage with suppliers with the aim of basically, let's say, involving suppliers that are sensitive to the mission of their organization. In the last 3 years, he has been working on a new contract for food in prison. And now we will hear from him. And he's going to show a video first.
Yes.
And I also would like to tell you that the case study is going, well, the experience is going to present is also reflected on a case study that we have developed, and you can find it already today on the website, and it will be also channeled, sorry, with the December newsletter. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's try to share this video with you.
Food plays an important role in prison, but for years there was little choice, a lot of waste, and a high degree of dissatisfaction. It had to be improved. We needed more freedom of choice for locations and detainees. Alongside ready-made meals, the option to order ingredients was also necessary. This required a new contract, allowing us to continuously improve. When the old contract expired, we had an opportunity. We could put the contract back on the market and do things completely different. So we got to work. At 26 locations, we surveyed all the wishes and possibilities. Also among the prisoners. We used this input for a targeted market consultation, and then to write a clear tender. 6 parties submitted bids. From them, we selected 4. We visited all the locations with them and then discussed their proposals with the location teams. Ultimately, we awarded our contract to these 3 parties. The result is a contract with more choice and flexibility for the locations and the detainees. Starting from 1 June 2022, we will take the year to transition all locations. This way, every prisoner will have sufficient, healthy, and varied daily meals. Locations will have a decisive role, suppliers will contribute to our societal mission, and we will reduce our carbon emissions and minimize waste. Much better, right?
Much better, right? And now I'm going to try to share my presentation with you. Is this working? Yeah. Yeah, my name is Walter van der Vlist, and Valentino introduced me already. I'm going to talk for a few minutes on our contract for food in Dutch prisons. A new contract, a new chance. And why are we providing food in prison? Well, we are obliged by Dutch penitentiary law. Their food is in two articles, Article 44 sub 1 and Article 44 sub 3. The first one is that we have to ensure that food is provided, and the next article is on that we have taken into account the religions or beliefs of the detainees when providing food. So what did we put in the market? Well, the characteristics are like basically the detainee has to make 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and a warm meal, and taken diets into account. And the contract is without sweets and coffee and tea and sugar and cream. That's another contract. And also the canteen products, shop items that prisoners buy themselves are not in this contract. So this is what like the food for 2 days for prisoners looks like. So you have an idea of what we are providing. Well, the description, delivery of daily food in prison has to be provided to 24 penitentiary institutions with a total of 26 locations. They are not all the same. Actually, they're all different, of which 3 have a central kitchen where they make everyday warm meals, 4 with a psychiatric center, and 1 with a care center. And what we did in this tender, and that's the main focus of today also, is we put quality as a high percentage in this tender. So what we asked is we want to challenge the contractors to distinguish themselves on the qualitative criteria. And we put 5 of them in this contract, in this tender. There was first a demand-driven process, because we had a supply-driven process that led to a lot of food waste, almost 50%. We were focusing on sustainability, on purchasing with impact. So how can you give extra for the prisoners when you look at food? Food is more than just a product. It's also about logistics, it's work in prison, it's about culture, it's about health, and it's also about reintegration. We asked also about the regional connection. So how can we connect regional suppliers? And we asked our suppliers for an implementation plan. We also, so what we asked in this 80%, 25% was on sustainability. And we asked the contractor to describe how his services for the assignment contribute to the achieving the objectives of the climate agreement and minimizing the impact on the environment for our organization. The description will at least address the following topics, and they had 3 pages for that. How is circularity taken into account? How is waste prevented, both at the facility and in the supply chain? And how are CO2 emissions minimized from source to plate? And How are animal proteins in the products and meals often reduced without the satisfaction of the prisoners decreasing? And how's the share of vegetable proteins increased? We also asked on social impact in this contract. And there we asked the contractor to describe how we can contribute to DGI's, that's our organization, social mission, by guiding inmates towards a successful return to society. The description will at least address the following topics. And it was, to what extent do you allow individuals to participate in the nutrition process? For instance, the logistics. Consider, for example, the distribution of food, preparing meals, putting together a range, etc. And how are the inmates guided in learning to cook and learning food skills? And what options does the contractor offer for guiding guidings to work after prison? So what we did with this contract is what we were looking at humanity. So the prison environment is a very difficult environment, and it's very easy to be very harsh on those people who are inside. And what we did is we put some extras in this contract to prevent food waste, to take care of humanity. And the first was, to prevent food waste, we provided choice. So not only meals, but also ingredients for prisoners who cook themselves. We made a contract with continuous improvement. So the KPIs the contractors put on, they had to make a growth path. So the contract the first year is not the same as the last year. And we spread the risk from 1 to 3 suppliers. We avoid price dumping through a fixed price, and we did independent research upfront on a just price, because we know the market, we knew the market, and we still know the market. This is such a big contract that they will dump the price when possible. So we were really trying to prevent it. We focused on quality. You saw that, 80%. And we integrated auditing in the contract. So every location is get audited in the contract on the things we put in the contract. And we following food guidelines and work with our so-called fooding centrum on what is good food. And we put measures on education and jobs in this contract. So work with prisoners in the food service. They already provided more than 50 jobs after prison. We learned food values to prisoners. We trained staff on working with prisoners. We provide jobs for prisoners during and after detention. But most important is we listened to the prisoner. So we do twice a year university research on the satisfaction of prisoners. And we have a minimum required in our contract of a 6 out of 10. So that's basically like the framework we are working on with this contractors. And I think when I heard the presentation of Ivo Locatelli, it reminds me of the courage you need to be transparent and open and ambitious to the market. Because what we saw in our contract, that we were so ambitious that these 3 large catering partners, they searched for subcontractors who can fill in these ambitions. So they didn't water down their own organization or their own, but they looked for the specific organizations who can fill in this reintegration project with prisoners. So they made connections through subcontracting to social enterprises who are helping on these topics. And I think that was very interesting for us to learn that if you are ambitious and if you have the courage to put it in your contract, those big contractors will go and search for partners who can fill in these specific demands. And that was my short presentation on this topic. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Walter. I propose that the audience can start asking the questions in Slido, and we will now move to the second presentation from the second contracting authority. So now from the Netherlands, we go to Denmark, in particular the city of Copenhagen. I'd like to introduce you Karsten Skillerup. He's been working for 5 years as a member of the social dumping team in the municipality of Copenhagen. He has been responsible for major cases involving wage dumping, and we are talking of contracts above 500,000 euros. Karsten is specialized in public economics and data science. So the floor is yours, Karsten.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see my presentation. Can you confirm? Okay, that's cool. I'm sorry, but I'm from. I want to talk about the municipality of Copenhagen's policies with responsible procurement today. Give me a second. Yes, we are the Office for Responsible Procurement, and I'm Karsten Skillerup. More specifically, I'm a part of the subdivision in the team called the Social Dumping Team, where we work with social dumping, obviously. The municipality of Copenhagen purchases for 1.8 billion euros a year, approximately. That's quite a big volume, I guess. Not compared to other major cities in Europe, of course, but still we have a lot of opportunity to do stuff with our contracts because our volume is that great. I want to talk a little bit about what we do today. I think that it's very interesting that the link to the subject matter when raising social demands in contracts is described as complex. I guess they are. But in our little Danish case, there's a lot of practice when it comes to implementing these kind of things. And actually, when you have worked with it for 5 years, it becomes a little bit of second nature. So it's quite interesting for me to be here today, because it also makes me realize that we're working quite good with this question already. I want to describe a little bit about our team. We have 5 major areas in this ESG perspective. It's divided between the social team and the environmental team, which are also my colleagues. We are 2 teams in one office. And I will start speaking a little bit about the social dimension. Our main focus is on service contracts, where we have this labor clause. The labor clause is a demand that wages must follow the minimum level in the most representative collective agreement. So when you are delivering a service to the municipality, you have to follow this collective agreement's minimum level. It also has to be applicable for the whole or the entire Danish territory, and some other demands that this collective agreement must meet. It must be involve the most representative labor market partners, for example. But it's quite objective which collective agreement for a given area which is applicable. So our labor clauses involves change responsibility. Our main contractor must guarantee that their subcontractors follows the same demand. So, and most municipalities in Denmark are using labor clauses. For all state entities, it's they must use a labor clause, but it's only a recommendation from the state that municipalities or local authorities use it as well. So, but what we do is that we do unannounced audits and investigations where if we find that we have some kind of suspicion that there is wage dumping in this area, we do a salary control where we ask for documents for the contractor to document that they have followed our demand about wages. This is a risk-based approach, which is just to prevent that the bureaucracy of what we are doing. It can be very labor intensive for our contractors to meet documentation requirements we set for them. So that's why we are working risk-based. If we find that some are underpaid, we demand that the employees are compensated. If not, we sanction the contractor. That's very effective, I would say. Yeah, this is a circle diagram in Danish. But what it shows is that nearly 2/3 of the times we are doing a document control, we actually find something. So you can view that as how much we are decreasing unnecessary bureaucracy for contractors. Because if it's only 1/3 of the times that we do not find anything, it's probably okay. But that's a very, very important KPI for us. Also work with education. Contractors must take in trainees. Here you set a quota based on the size of the contract. We do mandatory follow-up on all construction contracts. And that's very important because we have to ensure that it's being done. If there's no one checking whether or not the quota is met, we find that it's many times forgotten about. So that's very important. And also here we use harsh sanctions for the constructor if they don't meet that quota. Again, it's very effective to enforce your clauses. We also have a goods clause where we set up some requirements for responsible supply chains. That's both in Denmark and globally. And that's about child labor and fair working conditions globally. It's a little more broad, but we do it by doing desktop audits or site visits internationally as well. We collaborate with local stakeholders, and of course, again, if the contractor do not meet our demands, he is sanctioned. Okay, I want to speak a little about my colleagues in the green procurement team, because when we're speaking about the link to the subject matter, I find that it's quite interesting what they are experimenting with, because they are not setting out demands and as much as we do, actually. They have made, for example, a climate fund to promote climate-friendly purchases. So, if a kindergarten wants to take the climate-friendly option, they are not sanctioned very severely by the economics, or that we have this opportunity to prioritize where we want to do something for the climate when we are doing our public procurement. So another way is our internal climate tax, which is very new, but it's like a force in the opposite direction, where we are trying to internally put on a tax when someone is buying, I don't know, airplane flight or something, to keep them away from doing that or minimize it. So, but we also work with more traditional stuff. For example, green transport, putting demands for having electrified vehicles into our contracts. So, but we are two very similar teams who are following two different strategies. We, as the social part of the office, is very focused on demands, clauses, and the link to the subject matter, everything we do in that scope. Our other team is experimenting a lot more with having the internal structures working towards having a good procurement policy when it comes to climate and environmental issues. I find that very interesting. So it's not simple. You should use the right tool for the right job, and there's plenty of opportunities. I would just say, because I can see the time is very low, we're running out of time, and we also want to have some questions. Our policy is that if something is in a current contract, it should mean something. It's very easy to put something in the contract and not enforce it. And that is especially true. That's very true when it comes to social requirements and also climate requirements. It should mean something. And what we do in Copenhagen especially is enforcement. That's very important, and it works. We find a lot of non-compliant contracts, and we actually have the opportunity to punish contractors who are not meeting the requirements set out. And it's very simple. If we don't enforce it, it's our view that it's unfair competition. Someone else could have won that tender. So I want to just say thank you, and you are very welcome to contact me or my colleagues if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carsten. I would propose the following. Let's now take some questions. I would say let's start from the questions related to the two cases. So Annabelle, if you can put the questions. And then if time allows. So the first one is hi, Walter, very interesting. What was the biggest challenge that suppliers had to overcome in the tender? And then could you, no.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
that first.
Yes, that first. Yes.
I think the biggest challenge is that the demand-driven process is something that is very difficult for suppliers. The best thing, or what most of the suppliers want, is just say, give me 100 pencils and they must be red, and they deliver. And what we are asked them to do is to go inside into our institutions, ask our prisoners what they want, how they want it, and what's the best service they should provide. And we are measuring the satisfaction of the prisoners in this contract, and it has to be they have to be satisfied, because that is the only way we can measure food waste in prison. So I think that was the biggest challenge. What we did is we did a lot of work upfront in market consultation. So we asked the prisoners. Sorry, you're sharing your screen, Anna. I don't think, is that okay? Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
So we first did on paper. We asked questions to the market. Then we had interviews with 15 market parties. Then we had a market consultation with more than 40 companies. In the end, we actually shared our documents we were going to share to the market and ask these parties, are you going to subscribe? To be sure that we listen to them and they listen to us, and before we published the documents. So we had, I think, more than 6 months where we talked with the market parties about these challenges we have in this contract.
Okay, thank you very much. And there is another question for you from Julian. Basically, it was, I don't see it on the screen, but he was asking if you've been using more award criteria or contract performance clauses in your contract.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
If you had included social and environmental considerations more in award criteria or in contract performance conditions clauses.
Yeah, I think more in award criteria, but for instance, this contractual term of the satisfactory of prisoners is a very big thing. And also that we are going to audit, like Carsten told us that you should. Well, we are doing that. So we are putting auditors in prison to look at what they deliver. Because we saw in other contracts that, for instance, where there was a lot of pressure on price, we saw A quality fruit in the first weeks, and then B quality fruit in the second week, and at the end of the contract we had C quality fruit for prisoners. And that is also what I would like to stress out with humanity in prison, that you have to prevent your contractors to not working through the contract. I also saw something about site visits.
Yes.
Yeah, they actually went inside the prison. So they went inside, have to leave their phone out, go through the gates, then inside, and they looked at the food logistics, went on the floor, talked to prisoners, looked at the kitchens, and learned how life in prison actually, what it means. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And there is one related to Karsten. How do you set up sanctions?
Yes, we have different sanctions. It could be that the insurance policy is missing, or it could be that they are not delivering documentation or pay slips that we need to do our audit. There are different kind of sanctions. Also, if there is a severe underpayment, we also have sanctions for that. Normally, we set out the sanction for missing to not providing documentation to a percentage, a small part of the contract's total sum. So it's based on the contract sum. But when it comes to sanctions for not for underpayment, it's based on how big the underpayment is. So.
Thank you. And a question from Fanny that I guess can go to Karsten and also Roberto. Is it allowed to ask contractors, including their subcontractors, to submit allocated workers' pay slips? Is it mandatory or a mandatory or voluntary requirement?
It's a mandatory requirement for us that they should be able to provide the payslips of employees for the subcontractors. However, we only have a contract with our main contractor. So if they don't have any contract with their subcontractor that they can do this, they have a problem. But most subcontractors want to help. So. And it's quite normal in this, especially the building sector today, that you, as a main contractor, secures yourself so that you can push on any sanctions down the chain.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are other questions that we will not manage to respond now, but we will gather the questions from the speakers and send them to the participants later on. There have been repeated questions about the presentations, so all the presentations will be available on the website as well as the recording, so you can listen again, or for those who have missed the webinar, they can follow it. And now I would like to still use some Slido for the concluding questions, so we can put on the questions. Okay. So we would like to hear if you have been inspired from the practices that have been presented. Okay, 60% yes, a bit 68 yes. Okay, so this is good. 55 okay.
It is moving fast.
It's moving, yes. So 60 and 40, so that's encouraging. Thank you very much. We go to the next question. What kind of support would you need to make a better use of social clauses and environmental clauses in tendering procedures? Case studies. Yes, we are doing that. We are doing that, and then I'm sure that you are also familiar with this is on social procurement, so the 71 good practice cases that were developed some years ago by Iclay and Edel. Yeah. So case studies, standards and templates, examples, training, dedicated course, resources and commitment, practical guides, professionalism, incentives for suppliers, example clauses, standard and templates, exchange platforms, guidance documents. Okay, training material, more jurisprudence, sample criteria, help desk support, methodology. Okay, we have a clear idea. Thank you for this. Let's move to the next question. What is your appraisal of the session? As I said at the beginning, this session was slightly different because we integrated a capacity building session, so a mini training course, let's say. Okay, well, it's still okay, good. Yes, and the next one. And I would like to hear if you found it useful having this lecture in addition to the presentation by contracting authorities of their own experience, which is what we normally do in this kind of webinars. I don't see any votes coming in. Okay, it's coming. Okay. Okay, it was found very useful. Thank you for that. And we go to the okay. And also the experiences that have been presented by the two contracting authorities have been useful. Yes. Okay. Good. Yes. Thank you very much. I would say that we can close the webinar here. As I mentioned, you will find all the presentations and also the recording on the website. We will also gather the responses to your questions from the speakers and find a way to circulate them. And yeah, I also take the opportunity to say this is the last webinar of the year, but of course we will continue with webinars in the new year. Do not miss out the next news alert, which is going to be sent next week. And one case will be about the one from Walter. So you will be able to read more in depth about what they did. Thank you very much to all and have a good day.